Hello and welcome to How to Automotive. I'm Brian Essick, and in today's video we're going to be working on a 2013 through 2016 Honda Accord that has an intermittent starting problem. It'll zing on you. And what I mean by that is you'll push the start button and you'll hear it try to start, but it won't engage. So like I said, this is the Honda Accord with the V6 engine. So Honda has released a TSB technical service bulletin on this issue, and this covers the 2013 through 2016. So in this TSB, it has you replace the starter as the first step, and underneath the starter, when you go to replace it, is a shim, or it looks like a gasket. And this is the shim that they're referring to. I will put part numbers and stuff in the description of the video. Possibly I can find links, I'll add those there. So in the TSB, the first step is to replace the starter, and if it persists, there's a second part to the TSB. So like I said, we changed the starter and added the spacer or the gasket that the shim that they required, and it still intermittently will do this. So what they're going to have us do now is unbolt the flex plate from the torque converter inside the transmission and rotate the torque converter one bolt hole and then rebolt it up, and this is supposed to take care of the problem. So I'm going to walk you through this process of doing that. Now this sounds complicated or harder than what it is. It's really not that difficult, and I'm going to walk you step by step. Like I said, the first step would be to swap out your starter motor. This video I'm not going to show you how to do the starter motor repair, but it's pretty simple swap, and there's the gasket that you're going to use to put on there. Swap that out with a new one. Once you've got that done, if you still have the problem, what you're going to do is jack the front of the vehicle up where the wheels are off the ground. If you're doing this at home, use floor jacks and jack stands and jack it up on the pinch wheels, and you're going to have to get it up high enough where you can crawl underneath the vehicle. Go ahead and remove the right front wheel. Once you get the right front wheel removed, you can either take this shield off, or what you can do is flare this little tabs right here open, and we're going to get to the crank bolt. We need to crank the engine around by hand. So what you do is just flare these open here. Once you get that done, now you can put a 19 millimeter extension and ratchet on the crank bolt right here. And I definitely recommend using a 1/2 inch drive with some length on it. It makes it rotating the engine around a lot easier. I also have the transmission in neutral. You can push the start stop button twice with your foot off the brake, and then put your foot on the brake and shift it into neutral, and then turn the key off. I also recommend you put something behind the wheel so the vehicle doesn't roll away when you're racking it up or jacking it up. So now you're going to follow the oil pan to the back of the transmission where the oil pan and the transmission meet up, or the black of the block meet up. And we're going to remove this little cover right here. There's a couple 10 millimeter bolts. And then once you get that removed, you can pull this off like this. Now you'll be able to see the torque converter and flex plate right here. So this is the flex plate, the torque converter is behind it. So for timing issues, you can only do this TSB one time. So what we need to do is make sure that it has not been done before. So if this TSB has been done, they want you to write down the date and the TSB number on the flex plate here. So what we're gonna do is check to see if it's been done. So I made a paint mark right here on one of the bolts here, and we're gonna rotate this around and check and look for any of the markings to see if this TSB has been done before. To do that, I'm gonna rotate the crank here clockwise, in the clockwise direction, until I can see every one of the bolts coming around step by step. So I'll show you what I'm doing. So with the ratchet, I'm rotating the engine, and now I'm going to stop at every bolt and look to see if there was a TSB number written down on the flex plate. And if there's no TSB number written down on the flex plate, then we'll proceed and do the TSB on it and unbolt this, and I'll show you how to do that. So I'm rotating it around. There's 8 bolts in total on the flex plate and torque converter. So there's clearly no marks or TSB numbers documented on the flex plate. So we're going to go ahead and what we're going to do is unbolt it. So with a 10 millimeter wrench here, I'm going to unbolt the first one here, and then we'll rotate it to the next one. So with my paint marker, I'm going to make a new mark on it, and just make sure that you can clearly see that this is the start and stop finish spot here. So that was bolt number 1, and it's been removed and clearly marked. Now we're going to rotate to bolt number 2, and we're going to remove this bolt. And I'm just using a 10 millimeter ratcheting wrench to do this. Once you get this one done, we're going to rotate to the next one, which is number 3. And we're going to keep doing this until we get to the last bolt, which is number 8. So after repeating that process until you get to the 8th and final bolt, once you get that removed, I'm going to make a final mark right here with my paint marker here. I'm just going to mark it right here, and then I'm going to show you how to rotate the torque converter one bolt hole pattern. Now that it's unbolted, with your finger, you should be able to rotate the torque converter one gear bolt pattern over. It has the ring gear built onto the torque converter, so you just rotate it to the next one like this. Now we're going to reinstall all 8 of the bolts. So I also rotated that in a clockwise direction. Now that I did that, I'm going to start all the bolts. So I'm going to run this in until it's snug but not tight, and then I'll rotate the engine around and start the next one. And then what we're going to do is leave them just basically finger tight, and then we'll keep rotating them around until we get all the bolts started. Then we'll go back around and torque all the bolts. And the reason why I do that is I leave it loose so there's a little bit of slot left or right to help line up all the bolts and get them all started. If you tighten them down and you get to the next one, it might be a little bit off and you won't be able to get the bolts started. So you're going to repeat this process until you got all 8 bolts started and run down until they're just finger tight. Once you get all 8 of them restarted, now what we're going to do is we're going to torque it down. If you notice, none of the bolts had thread locker or Loctite on them, so I'm not going to use that on any of those bolts. Now we're going to torque these down to 9 foot-pounds. So you're going to set your torque wrench up, and we're going to torque it down to 9 foot-pounds, rotate it to the next bolt, and repeat this process until all 8 of the bolts are torqued. Once you get them all torqued down, then you're supposed to write the TSB number on the flex plate here with a permanent marker or a paint pen. Then you put the cover on. I forgot to do that, so I had to re-rack the vehicle and go back in there and take that cover back off and write that TSB number on there. So don't make that mistake. It'll save you a lot of time by writing it on there. That way, if the next guy comes along, he knows that it's been done, because this is only designed to be done one time. If you do it 2 times, then it creates problems with timing issues on the engine and transmission. Now that that's done, you can go ahead and remove your ratchet from your crank pulley here and put your covers back on if you took them off, or put the little tabs back into position. Put the tire back on and torque that down. I believe the torque for this wheel was 76 foot-pounds, so go ahead and torque that down in a star pattern. Now we're done. I started my vehicle here probably 40-50 times. I didn't have a problem. Test drove it, started another half dozen times, and didn't have any issues with the starter not engaging anymore. Now, according to Honda, if this doesn't take care of the problem, the next step is to replace the torque converter inside the transmission. I'm Brian Essick from How to Automotive. I hope this video was helpful for you and your starter issues are taken care of. Thank you for watching.